It's been about a year since my last update video, and honestly, I never imagined how well Home Unknown would start to look after just 1 year of progress. It's starting to feel less like a project with an unreachable end, and more like a real game that just needs a few more features and to be polished. And that's what I've been working towards, adding a new feature here, fixing a bug there, and before too long, a playable game started to emerge. Sit back and enjoy. This is Home Unknown, version 0.2 update. For those who don't know about the project, Home Unknown is a planetary survival game focused on exploration, base building, and crafting. Other ideas that'll eventually make it into the game include seasons, weather, and space travel. The project was started about a year and a half ago by myself, the sole developer, and many tutorials that I consulted along the way. There is no solid roadmap for development, but if you'd like to follow this project, check out the links in the description for all the social medias and the development blog. And don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you like what you see. Alright, let's get into the changes. Graphics. A huge selling point for any game, and, coincidentally, the bane of my existence. Despite the agonizingly long time it took, several updates to graphics have been made, with an overall shift from an outright cartoony style to a cross between cartoon and realism. To be honest, my vision of how the game should look has changed between updates. The original game, which was more like a prototype, had this low poly vibe which I decided not to go with. Instead, I opted for something a bit less cartoony, but still surreal enough that some goofy animations or items can be added in if needed later. Graphical changes have also been localized to the forest area of the game. There are technically 3 biomes on the planet, but the other 2 haven't been fully implemented yet. I'm hoping to address the jungle biome in the next update and give it the graphics overhaul it needs. There are too many changes to go into great detail about, so let me just list off a few of the major ones. The color scheme has been desaturated. A day and night sky have been added. The world terrain has been updated to allow for more realistic continents. Coastlines have been smoothed out as well to give a less blocky appearance. The ground is no longer a solid color, but textured instead. Updates have been made to 3D models. For instance, trees now have leaves, and the character model has been updated entirely. Particle effects have been added to give some ambiance. As far as graphical changes goes, that pretty much sums it all up. And you know, graphics can only take a game so far. Really, the core of any game is the actual gameplay, and let me tell you, Home Unknown has had some major updates to its gameplay. So you wake up on a foreign planet with no supplies. What do you do next? Pick up some sticks and stones? Build a cabin? Then what? Over the last few months, I've been working on answering these questions. The player will need a direction or a goal to work towards. Although there isn't an overarching goal yet, there are now some smaller, more attainable goals to achieve. For instance, some trees and stones can't be harvested using stone tools. The player might also notice that they can build a furnace and a crafting table. From here, they can assume there is some form of progression even though it's not stated outright. This should give them something to work towards. And if you're wondering, iron tools have been implemented. Iron ore has to be mined from the caves, and it can be thrown into the furnace to be turned into iron bars. With these changes to game flow, it seems players will have a direction. But what is a survival game without having survival elements? Survival games have a delicate balance between trying to kill the player and giving them the resources they need to survive. I'm not going to pretend that Home Unknown is anywhere close to having these elements in tune, but that's alright for now. Really what we're doing here is just introducing dangers and allowing the player to have a fighting chance. Hunger is still a feature that hasn't really been touched due to its simplicity, although I have fixed up the cooking and menus. There are 2 cookable items, that being meat and fish. Also, farming has been introduced to add yet another source of food if the player would rather go that route. Honestly, the food is pretty abundant right now, but that will make more sense whenever winter has been added into the game, and that's when food will be more scarce. Combat has been implemented as well. It's still a little clunky, but just having combat at this stage is pretty good and adds a level of struggle for the player. Speaking of trouble, if a fight goes south, the player can now die and respawn at specific spawn locations. The first spawn point is where they randomly spawn on the world, and that spawn point can be changed by using a bed. Darkness is scary, and if the player chooses, they can sleep through the night. Across the world, the player will also stumble across these weird scorch marks on the ground. These are indications of a new spooky feature, rifts. They are only active at night and will spawn enemies periodically. These enemies will then roam around and attack the player on sight. With these survival elements in place and the graphical updates, the project is now a playable game. So I was super proud of the version 0.2 build of the game because if nothing else, I thought stability was finally achieved. That is, before this happened. I sent the build to a friend for a playtest and things did not go as I expected. I could barely keep track of all the issues as the playtest went on. That's not to say I neglected to playtest myself, but there were just some things I didn't think to test. For instance, clicking 2 crafting recipes in a row without canceling a build to then have 2 buildings active, or using a campfire while sitting to then have the ability to run around seated and heal. In all, I'm glad I got a good playtest out of that, but man, I have some work to do now. Ah yes, my favorite part of working on any development project, new features. Honestly, adding new features is so much more fun than fixing bugs. Of course, maybe if I did everything right the first time, there wouldn't be any bugs to fix. In the next update, the game might see a few new features, including weather, temperature, and/or seasons. I put a big emphasis on might, because the whole development process is a big shrug. In saying that, these are the next core features I would really like to tackle. The initial idea that drove me to make this game is the idea of celestial bodies and being able to explore them. Not only that, but make them have a semi-realistic behavior. For instance, planets will be tilted on an axis, so over the course of a year there will be summer and winter in temperate zones, and even a 24-hour night cycle near the poles during the winters. Now, these features will also add much more to the gameplay loop in terms of survival. Players could choose to deal with the overheated jungle, but have plentiful food, or risk a safer life up in the boreal forest, where food is more scarce. Or maybe the moderate temperate zones are more your style, where you get both summer and winter, but they're in a more mild variety. Well, I guess I will leave it at that for now. There are other changes that will come in the next update as well. That includes bug fixes and other quality of life changes. So you saw this video and you're interested in the progress, but can't wait forever to see another update video? Do not despair, for I've started a development blog where I post more frequent bite-sized updates. I'm still trying to get a proper schedule down, but feel free to check it out on my website, link in the description. Also, what do you think about this update? Are you excited for more? Leave a like or a comment down below, and if you want to keep up with Home Unknown as it's being developed, go ahead and subscribe. Well, that's it for the version 0.2 update. Until next time, farewell.